Not that song again, please!
Oh, who are the people in your neighborhood? In your neighborhood, in your neighborhood.
Sesame Street's Bob McGrath, today on Pop Goes the Culture. Hi, I'm David Levin, and this is another educational episode of Pop Goes the Culture. Well, if you grew up watching Sesame Street anytime between 1969, when the show first premiered, till it finally went to HBO just a few short years ago, you know my next guest. Bob McGrath was one of a handful of human beings who cavorted on screen with the beloved Muppets of Jim Henson. Bob was in the news recently when he revealed that his 35-plus-year contract with Sesame Street was not renewed when HBO began producing new episodes. The public outcry was so strong that producers relented and his character has been brought back. In this exclusive and extensive conversation with Bob, done before HBO renewed his contract, we talked about his time on Sesame Street and how it changed his life. He also told me about his time with the legendary Mitch Miller. He's the last remaining singer from Sing Along with Mitch, a staple of network television for years back in the early days of TV. Bob was candid, charming, and just how you'd hope he would be in real life. Here's Bob McGrath. So, way before Sesame Street started, you were a singer, a crooner, how would you put it, an Irish tenor?
All of the above. To go back a little bit, I started singing when I was 6 years old. We inherited my grandmother's big old upright piano. We lived on a farm, and she didn't have room in her new apartment. And my mother was a pianist and a singer, not professionally, but she knew everyone. She had 8 children in her family, and her mother made sure they all learned an instrument, which is interesting. I'm not quite sure why. I wish she were around to like to ask her. Anyway, she was playing one day, and I walked by and started kind of humming along. And she said, "Oh," I said, "See if you can sing this." So she taught me a couple lines in the good old summertime. And she said, "I think you have a voice." She said, "But can you learn this?" So by the time my dad came in from the fields as a farmer, I had learned in the good old summertime. And I sang for my father and did in the good old summertime a couple hours later.
Wow.
And that was kind of the beginning of, I was the last of 5. And she was a city girl and reluctantly became a farmer's wife. She really wanted to live in the city and commute, and her mother said, your husband's a farmer, you're going to be a farmer's wife. And so this was, and she was wonderful. She helped him all the time. But this was, in a way, this was kind of her ticket off the farm also, because I started doing every possible kind of a, event that could happen in the small rural town. But by the time I was 9, she was schlepping me up to Chicago to the Reuben Stars of Tomorrow and Morris B. Sachs Amateur Hour major radio programs. And I was winning a lot of first prizes and coming back to the Civic Opera House at 9 and competing against all the other first prize winners. So I started getting a taste of singing at an early age.
Wow, that's great. That's, I guess, when you
sang all through grade and high school and planned on being an engineer, like my brother at the University of Illinois.
Be practical.
Yeah, be practical. And I got a 1-week scholarship to a little summer camp outside Chicago at the old J. Ogden Armour Estate. And they had all the faculty from Northwestern, the conservatory there. And we did sort of medium, semi-classical, Kurt Weill kinds of things, etc. And at the end they said, "What are you planning?" I said, "I'm going to be an engineer. I'm going to Illinois." So they said, "You ever thought of music?" And I said, "I've been singing all my life, but can you make a living at it?" And he said, "Sometimes." So he said, "I really would suggest you give it a try." And he recommended Northwestern, Indiana, University of Michigan. And my very best friend was going to Michigan. And so I said, okay. So this was like a month before school was to start, because I was all ready to go to Illinois. And I applied and got turned down because I was like 6 months too late applying. But fortunately, his father and uncle were both Michigan grads, Phi Gams, and they called one of their fraternity brothers and said, "Hey, bud," and so, the connection worked, and I got in, and I graduated there. I got my bachelor's in voice 4 years later in 1954, and was the president and the first soloist of the Glee Club in the 125 history as a freshman, and a lot of good stuff happened there. And then went in the Army. Couple of years in Germany, attached to the 7th Army Symphony, which was an incredible orchestra. I wasn't a playing member because I was a voice, not an instrumental major, but had a chance to do a lot of singing and touring with soldier shows, etc. And do you want to go on, or shall we?
I'm loving this. I'm loving
I'll
this.
I'm trying to do the best edit I can, but I'm.
Nah, don't edit if you could. You know,
as an Irishman, it's hard to edit.
No, it's the good. Think of this as your debriefing.
Okay, good. So when I was ready to get out, I knew I wanted to go to get a graduate degree in New York, and asked a couple of guys in the symphony, and one of the fellow who was a great, phenomenal percussionist I said either Juilliard or Manhattan School of Music, and he said, I'll go to Manhattan. He said, everybody at Juilliard, they feel when they graduate they're just going to walk across the street and become first chair of the Philharmonic.
Don't they?
They do. Most of them do. So I followed his lead. I did Manhattan School of Music and got my master's there a couple of years later. And while I was doing that, I started doing a lot of freelancing in New York. I hounded down every contractor, vocal contractor in Manhattan, and pigeonholed them in closets up at NBC. One was Mike Stewart, who was the lead bass in all the L&M commercials on and off camera, and an incredible bass voice.
Back when they did cigarette commercials.
Back when they did cigarette commercials. And so he started hiring me for some voiceovers and all kinds of jingles and this kind of thing.
What kind of jingles did you do?
Well, I guess this was a little bit later. My best one was on camera with Doublemint Gum. And it turned out that Mr. Wrigley loved Mitch Miller, Sing Along with Mitch. I'm jumping ahead a little bit. And a girl that I sang with there. And they had auditioned all across the country, replaced the twins that sang, You'll Love Doublemint Gum, right? Uh-huh. And so we auditioned, and I don't think it was a very good audition, but it was a slam dunk. He loved the two of us, and so I did it, and that ran, and that was for quite a while.
And you're not even a twin.
I'm not even a twin, no. Nor was she a twin to me.
Was it double your pleasure, double your fun?
Yeah. You'll love Doublemint Gum, Doublemint Gum. Yeah. So anyway, jumping back before that time came along, because when I called him and said, I understand you're hiring for the Mitch Miller show, then I'll jump back.
Yeah.
He said, I would love to hire you, but this is Mitch Miller.
Right.
And you remember Mitch, hopefully.
Well, you know, the certain people, below a certain age, you wouldn't remember Sing Along with Mitch. You know, I think Sing Along with Mitch was of a certain period. Yeah.
And for older people, from 60 to 64, it was the #1 show on NBC, opposite The Untouchables. And one little insert, cute story. Life magazine decided to do a 2 full-page spread of Mitch Miller on one side and the Untouchables, and we were all dressed as gangsters. I was Babyface Nelson because I was the youngest in the group, and we shot. And then they had the Untouchables on the opposite side, and the title was something like, which gang is going to bump off the other?
Oh, that's funny. That's great.
And we went on in after a session out at Avenue M and 14th Street, Brooklyn, and shot from like midnight till 2 in the morning with a very, very high-end Life magazine photographer. And unfortunately, one of his connectors wasn't plugged in right. We had to go back and do the whole. It was very embarrassing.
Oh,
we
gosh.
did it. But before
Sounds like my life, by the way.
Yes, I know. I have those problems daily. So anyway, while I was going to Michigan to Manhattan School of Music, I started freelancing and did through the school. I was part of a quartet that did the Public Solace Festival. Mm-hmm. We did a Haydn Mass down there and had a chance to sing under Public Solace, which was thrilling, and recorded under Stravinsky a piece called Les Noces, and recorded with Robert Shaw and became part of the Fred Waring Pennsylvanians. This is all old-timey stuff. Probably most of your audience will not know, but they were all big at the time. And
certainly Stravinsky was certainly.
Yes, he's hung around.
What was he like? I mean, what was it like?
Well, I didn't get to know him well. This was like a 1 or 2 recording session,
right? And
he and Bob, he had an associate, and they were both there. But he was wonderful. I mean, what little personal contact, which was minimal.
Right.
The main thing, he had to be able to sight read and sing all the right notes.
Right.
And it was difficult music.
Yeah.
But the training helped all of that. So I did that, and everything from I had to go sing high holidays all over, even as a good Irishman.
Well, of course.
Yeah. And Requiem Masses. I'd been singing Gregorian chants since I was in 3rd, 4th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And so I made a living doing just about, I think I did a rock and roll date midnight behind Anita Bryant going ba 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 ba. So I had a broad range of back because I had sung pop stuff all my life, and then the classical training, and I loved both of them. Quite frankly,
Right.
I never turned down a job, no matter what it was. Both because I needed the money, and I enjoyed doing it.
Right.
And you learn from one to the other.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting first part of my life. And then the Mitch Miller Show. Shall I continue?
Okay, now let's talk a little bit about the Mitch Miller Show. How did that come about? And talk about, I mean, Mitch Miller was a big deal, you know, just pre-Beatles, you know,
Yep.
just around that time, the whole
Exactly.
sort of Camelot Kennedy thing.
Yep.
And there was a certain style of music that's like sort of, you know, oh, the Yellow Rose of Texas, you know, that stuff with a little bit of echo added to it. Yeah. So talk about Mitch Miller as, you know, especially for a lot of the audience doesn't know who the heck he was.
Mitch Miller was classically trained up in Rochester at Eastman School of Music. He was one of the top 2 or 3 classical oboe players in the country. And he's got recordings that are just unbelievably beautiful. Then he came to New York, and he got into the pop music and signed with Columbia Records as the A&R, artist and repertoire person. So he started recording people like Rosemary Clooney and Johnny Mathis and all kinds of great top artists there, and produced many, many, many major hits. Then he got these 25 guys together and started singing 25 guys, singing, as you say, the Yellow Rose of Texas, and I'm looking over a 4-leaf clover, kind of parlor room, wonderful things that people used to sing around the piano. And big productions took us about 40 hours per 1-hour show to do between rehearsals and pre-recording, 2 days out in Brooklyn shooting the show. And they just went off the charts in terms of millions of people watching and knowing.
And sold records like crazy.
He sold 1 billion records. So when I heard that he was going to be doing this show, I thought, that'd be great. I called him and he said, Bob, I'd love to hire you, but Mitch is a very, very faithful, honest guy with his people he's been working with. And so he wants to use all the 25 guys he's had for the last number of years, over many, many years recording. I said, okay, great. Would have been lovely. But after the first show, there were several guys in their late 70s, and they realized this was most of them were in their late 40s and 50s, but they realized this was going to be a bigger show than they can handle. So a couple of them, 2 or 3 of them said, I think we don't do it. And that's when one or 2 other fellows and myself had a chance to audition.
So that was a big deal.
A very big deal. The money was decent, quite good. And I was just one of 25 guys. I didn't audition for Mitch. Mitch never heard me sing a solo during the first year of the shows. But after the first year of the shows, or during the first, people started writing in saying, what does the old kind of heavyset guy sound like? What's the guy with the white mustache? And he looks cool. And so he started giving 1 or 2 guys a solo every now and then. And a few months into that process, he came over to me at the rehearsal one day and said, how'd you like to do a solo on St. Patrick's Day? I said, good. He said,
I wonder why he picked me.
how about Mother McCree? I said, I've been doing that since I was, 6, no problem. So he had never heard me sing. And so I thought, when it came time to do the recording session, and he conducted the soloists in the special solo booth while Jimmy Carroll conducted the band and the chorus. He stood right in front and did every year. So I thought, I'm going to sing my fanny off because he's never heard me sing. I was in good voice, I was all hyped up, and I sang Mother McCree to the best of my ability. And when he finished, he had this big smile. He pulled up his sleeve, and he was very hairy, and all of the hairs in his arm were standing upright. And he looked at me with a big smile and said, you son of a bitch, where'd you learn to sing like that?
Wow.
And I said, I guess my mommy. And that was the beginning of a wonderful relationship. He gave me about 4 or 5 more solos. The mail came flooding in. And by the end of that season, even partway through, he said, how would you like to be the featured male soloist along with Leslie Uggams, who was the featured female soloist?
Wow.
And he said, I'll double your salary and blah, blah, blah. And I said, I'm not going anywhere. He said, I'd rather give it to you than the government. So he was wonderful to work for. He was a very hardworking person himself. He expected all of us to be equally as hardworking, but all, to be expected if you want to do a professional job. And the show just shot to the top of the record chart. They continued selling millions. I'm still getting a check for sometimes $7.18, literally,
Don't turn it down.
from the Bridge Over the River Kwai, the song we exactly.
Did you all whistle?
Yeah. We all whistled. And I wonder who's this little old lady sitting there figuring I'm the only live person left out of the 25. My very wonderful friend Phil Olson was 1 year older than me, beautiful tenor voice, and he did quite a number of solos as well as some other guys, and he just passed away. But how did they keep track? This was from 1960 to 64.
Elves. They have lots of musical elves. The BMI and ASCAP elves
Isn't
are
it
all
incredible, though? Yeah, it's nice to know
big-
there's some honest people.
big business.
So
So I didn't realize.
There's more to continue.
Yes, but I didn't realize. I thought, I'll go talk to Bob about Sesame Street, but I didn't realize that I was getting like the living legacy of the Mitch Miller show here.
Well, it was great. You want another little taste of it?
Yeah,
So
sure.
at the end of the show, we were hired. We did a thing down at the in Philadelphia, the big club down there that burned down. Interestingly enough, forget the name of it. And we were invited to we did Vegas at the name of the club. I'll remember in a second. And all the papers said, this group will last like a week. This is not Las Vegas. This is Sing Along with Mitch. I think we were hired for 2 weeks and extended another 2 or 3 weeks. We were selling out every night.
Wow.
So following that, because the show was picked up in Japan on NHK, their biggest station,
Mm-hmm.
in the second season, when I started doing a regular solo every week, which was very fortunate, they invited us for a 30-concert tour from Hokkaido to Fukuoka, all over Japan. And Leslie was busy in Vegas, which was to my good fortune, so I had a chance to do 3 or 4 solos on the show, along with 2 or 3 other guys, and we did 30 concerts in 30 nights, covered the entire country. And every time I got out to do it, first of all, we were amazed. We expected to see 40 to 90-year-olds in the audience like here. We had 2,500, 3,000, 4,000 teenagers every night. And this was a shock to all of us.
So you were like the Beatles, basically.
Yeah.
Except 6 times better.
Well,
Because there were 25 of you,
There
It was,
were 25 of us. So the booker, Tots Nagasima, who was a 6'1", handsome-looking guy, brought up in England with an English accent, with this beautiful-looking Japanese countenance, right? And he said, "What's going on here?" Well, they were all screaming "Babu, Babu" every time I finished a solo. And I said, "I have no idea." So he had a couple of his agents look around Japan, and I found out there were Babu Magula's fan clubs all over Japan. So he said, "Wow," he said, "how would you like to come back in the fall and open at the top 2 clubs in Tokyo?" I said, "Not bad. I'm out of a job. Why not?" I said, "What are the names?" He said, "Oh, one is the Latin Quarter." So I said, "You're in." So I worked my tail off for the next 2 or 3 months. I did a couple of Japanese songs on the first tour, and they are such grateful people. If you even can say arigato,
Yeah.
they fall all over because they're so happy to have somebody else appreciate their language. So I spent intense 2 or 3 months learning a whole program for.
And when was this? What years
This
were
was
these?
about 1965, shortly after the Mitch show went off the air.
Right.
And so I learned a half a dozen Japanese songs with the help of my friend of my wife, because her dad had worked in Japan before the war and after the war. And so I did that thinking, well, this would be a nice one opportunity to go to Japan. I brought my wife. I was booked for 6 weeks,
Wow.
and I brought her over for 2. And that bounced off for the next 3 years for 8 more trips. So I did nine solo trips 3 times a year for the next 3 years, from 55, 6, 7, 8. And ended up doing 8 or 10 LPs and 30 or 40 singles and a gazillion everything, commercials in Japanese. By my second tour, I was doing half my show in English and half Japanese.
Wow.
Opening the second half was in kimono and gato with a shakuhachi player. It was bizarre.
Sounds like fun, though.
The Prime Minister's daughter was a fan, and he invited my shakuhachi player, which is a bamboo flute, to come over and sing old Japanese folk songs for he and a half a dozen of his best buddies while they sup sake and soba and stuff.
Oh, that's amazing.
And my mind, I thought, this is really bizarre. Here's an Illinois country farm boy, Irish, singing Japanese folk songs to the Prime Minister of Japan and his buddies. Isn't that, who could tell?
Little did you know.
Little did I know when I sang, in the good old summertime. That's where I...
Darling, I am growing old.
We're going to take a break right there, and we will be back.
Silver threads among the clouds.